Welcome back to The Hard Question on Smart Talk.
And you talk about a hard question. How do you run for Congress at a time when we've been suffering a pandemic and you got rioters all over the place because people are unhappy with what's going on, whether it's because of the late George Floyd or people are just ticked off? I'm calling a really good friend of the show, and I say that a lot to people, but Sargis Sangari, who's running for retired lieutenant colonel, running for the candidate of the 9th Congressional District in Illinois, and that's around Glenview and the area around there, right, Sargis?
Correct. Actually, it's good to be here again. Plankita, Skokie, Glenview, Evanston, Niles, large swaths of the northwest suburban areas fall into it.
You tell us about, people have kind of gone over the top. They're so angry because they've been on lockdown that whether they even understand what's going on with the horrible death of George Floyd, people have taken that to allow looting and rioting, etc. The president came out and said he was going to he was hoping that the states would act upon their own right. What are you seeing? How are you dealing with this now that you're running for Congress?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't have any American murdered in police custody, and that's basically what happened. That's why the officers being charged were with murder.
Of course.
Now, there's two courts. You have the court of public opinion, and you have this actual legal courts that come into play. And the court of public opinion is where you see the flames that are taking place and the riots that are taking place, the looting that is taking place, the mass protests that are taking place. This is where a politician needs to come in and pour water on this fire. Unfortunately, we're in a time where most of them come in and pour diesel fuel and keep burning it because they're 5 months away from an election and they still want to retain their seat. Damn be what happens to the country.
So, you've also had the consideration of whether or not you're going to have the vote by the post or whether you're going to actually be able to go in and vote in person. Give us your thoughts on the whole process as it's moving forward, Sargis.
Well, look, it's difficult for us. The only way we can really get to the voters is through social media because of the lockdown. Unfortunately, we've had numerous issues on social media. There's been times we haven't been able to even share the videos that we've had on our site because it's been flagged. General information sharing, it's very difficult for somebody who's a conservative to be able to work off of those platforms. You saw it yourself with the POTUS having Twitter gone after him. Eventually, I think Congress needs to make a decision. Are these utilities or are these private companies? And you cannot just, walk the line between the two and continue conducting operations as you do. So it's been difficult for us. When I wrote the article on the COVID and the P4 lab in China, which was written in early February, finally was posted in Japan Forward because our local newspapers didn't want to carry it. Just before Japan went through a lockdown on 3 April, it laid out basically everything that everybody else was talking about, has talked about, to include the apparatuses within our government. However, even those articles were not allowed to be shared by multiple people. For 2 weeks, we lost the site Near East because after I did an interview with Michael Yon Live, we got hacked. So it's a difficult process by which you're trying to run. Yet every apparatus that you have within social media either limits you, constricts you, and you got foreign powers who don't like to allow you to discuss that information or squeezing you. If you try to do it through local media, you have been wonderful, gracious to have us on your show. A lot of the local media news channels don't like us to be on their shows because we give a different perspective on issues. So I've started my own show, which is called The New Paradigms, which is a podcast, and we did our first broadcast yesterday, hoping that at least somehow we could reach our audience and our voters out there.
Cool. So what is the link for that?
You can go to Vote Sangari website and Facebook page. And yesterday's show, we really looked at what is happening on the streets here in Chicago and in the country. And I actually tied Tide laid out the case of how Antifa was also operating in Syria when we had our guys down there. Remember, I ran the Syrian military force structures in Syria, and one of our commanders was killed by the Kurdish YPG forces there, and Ilyas Nasser in an ambush. Kurdish YPG forces killed at a certain Christian commander, and at that time they had Antifa guys operating within the YPG in support of YPG.
How did you know they were? I'm going to stop you. How did you know that they were Antifa guys, Sargis?
Because they flew their flag. They flew their flag.
Wow! And do you have pictures of that?
Yeah.
Do you have pictures of that?
Pictures. I'll send those pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the kind of thing that people need to see right now when the president is talking about designating them as a terrorist organization. This is the time for you to show those pictures and to write an article to verify that that's actual. That's true.
Well, we lost one of our commanders. YPG was working against our wants and desires in the region, to include the U.S. wants and desires. They were conducting attacks even against other Kurds in Turkey, which is a NATO ally. They were getting funding, also sources from the Russians. So when you got these individuals that are from Antifa, they're down there fighting, flying the colors, flying their flags alongside with the YPG flag, killing one of my commanders, and then now you have these individuals, which were U.S. citizens, coming back here. Right. I would designate them as a foreign terrorist organization rather than an organization here that the Department of Justice will go after as being a local U.S. Organization. Because right now, also, just so you know, their ties with what is happening in the streets is really they're the ones flaming these pouring gasoline on these riots. They're the ones who are actually giving money on the ground, on video, as you have seen now on social media, for individuals to begin these riots, which has nothing to do with the organizations that are out there trying to actually advocate for some social justice for Mr. Floyd, who, again, was murdered in police custody. So,
Sargis, because we're running out of time. Here, listen to me real carefully. I want everyone to go to your site. Tell them how they can go to your site, because you're running for Congress. Very important.
They could go to Vote Sangari. We need all the help possible. We need financial support. We need people to help hit like. We need volunteers. Please share what we share there. The information is for free. Everything I just talked about on your show, Blanquita, I talked in my first podcast. This is just to get individuals to understand what is happening in our country, in our streets here in Chicago. So Vote Sangari is very important. We need all the donations
possible. And is it
possible.
Vote Sangari, Vote Sangari, SANGARI.com?
Correct, VoteSangari.com.
Okay, and you're going to send me some pictures, right? You'll send them to me privately. But I think, Sargis, what you've just said is absolutely stunning. And you have information probably that nobody else has broken except on your podcast. That's very essential. And probably, have you sent any of this to the Attorney General, Bob Barr?
Blanket, we have passed it on to our contacts, but we'll see what happens at the end. Look, there's going to be more issues that we're going to have to deal with here, to include Antifa using drug networks that are going to be now starting to use Mexican nationals to fight in black neighborhoods to expand their drug networks to be able to fund this so-called operation that they're trying to run in our streets.
Well, what I've heard, Sargis, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong in this, through my contacts that are in Venezuela, they tell me that the link goes from Bolivia through Venezuela, and it is the heroin that could be coming in from the Middle East, and then it goes in through the drug cartels through Mexico. Have you heard anything to that effect?
And Ecuadorians using the Mexicans to operate in Chicago.
We're going to get you back on the show soon, my dear friend. Sargis Sangari, thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to go to votesangari.com. I'm Blanquita Cohen. This is a hard question.